And now I'd like to introduce Scott Finn. Scott Finn is the relatively new Executive Director of West Virginia Public Broadcasting. He has served stints as News Director at WUSF in Tampa, News Director and reporter here for West Virginia Public Broadcasting, and was formerly a State House reporter for the Charleston Gazette. More importantly for you, Scott was also a VISTA worker in Big Ugly Creek, West Virginia, and founded and ran an AmeriCorps program called Appleby, which you've been hearing about at Southern West Virginia Community and Technical College. He's also been a 6th grade social studies and English teacher, so he has been where you all are now, and we're glad to have him here today. Scott?
So I'm going to explain how you get from Big Ugly to Big Bird. I run the PBS and the NPR affiliates in West Virginia, and just to get warmed up though, I'm hoping that you guys can do a little participation with me if you don't mind. All you need to do is be able to raise your hand and say, "That's me," if it is you that answers this question. So if I said you are a person, you'd raise your hand and say, "That's me." Okay, you do both of these things, right? Raise your hand and say, so if I said you're an AmeriCorps member.
That's me.
Excellent. First generation in your family to go to college.
That's me.
Born in West Virginia.
That's me.
Born outside West Virginia.
That's me.
WVU fan?
That's me.
Marshall fan? Could care less either way.
That's me. USF fan.
All right, how about this one? A leader.
That's me.
If you are not yet considering yourself a leader, by the end of this year, you are going to be one, whether you want to be or not. People are going to look to you for leadership to figure out what to do next. And that's a given. I think that it's really kind of easy to say you are a leader, you're going to become a leader. I think the hard part is to take that leadership that you already own or will own and share it with other people, to share it with the people that you serve, to make them into the people doing service, to make them into the leaders too. That's the trick, and that's what we'll talk about in a second. But I want to talk about Big Ugly first. Big Ugly Creek is actually a small, beautiful place to live. It's in southern West Virginia, and I was a VISTA AmeriCorps worker there back in almost 20 years ago. And I was sent there to clean up an old elementary school, Big Ugly Elementary, that had shut down. It had been shut down for a couple of years. Big Ugly never gets old to say. And it was a mess. If you guys live in rural parts of West Virginia and you've seen some of these closed schools, you know what happens if they're abandoned. And this had been abandoned for 2 years. All the windows were busted out. The water was off. The electricity was off. In the school itself, it was about ankle deep in like old food and trash, and it was a mess. And I would show up at Big Ugly, and not being from the community, and I'm like, what in the world have I gotten myself into? I don't know what to do. I don't know how to start. And so I went outside to the only thing that worked in this whole school, which was the playground. And I just kind of hung out and played on the playground equipment. And eventually, kids would get off the school bus, and they say, who's this weird dude playing, on the playground equipment? And so we started to, hang out together, me and the kids at Big Ugly. And then very soon, the mothers of Big Ugly showed up. Who's this guy hanging out with the kids at Big Ugly? And so I told them my sob story. They've sent me here. I have no money. I have no idea what to do. I can't fix anything. I'm the most useless person in the world, and yet I have to fix this school. And so the next day, the mothers of Big Ugly showed up, and they showed up with big buckets, these big white buckets. And they showed up with mops, and they showed up with a ton of cheap Clorox they got at the dollar store. And they just started to muck the place out. We had, one of the mothers had a relative that knew somebody that knew the dumpster company. Another one knew somebody that knew the people in the county jail system that could send out a crew to help clean it out. And we didn't have any water, so what they did is they went to the creek. They took these big white buckets, they took them to the creek, and they filled them up and put a whole bunch of bleach in them, and that was how we mucked out the building. And then I didn't know how to replace the windows. and somebody came with a whole bunch of leftover plexiglass that they had back at their house, and one of the old grandfathers took pity on me, and he came and he showed me how to do that. He basically did that for me. And then another retired miner came a different time, and he figured out the plumbing, and I watched him and handed him stuff as he fixed our plumbing for us. And eventually, Big Ugly Elementary School became Big Ugly Community Center. And 20 years later, to this day, it is still an important place for the people of Big Ugly. Actually, really the only place for them to gather as a community. We had an after-school program, we had Energy Express, and we helped bring Energy Express to Lincoln County, which is an important thing for Lincoln County. I learned a lot about being a leader. The main thing I learned is that when you're a leader, sometimes you have to ask for help. And sometimes in the process of asking for help, you're really being the best sort of leader. Instead of telling somebody what to do, you're allowing them to show you what they can do. And that's a tough thing to learn. I went off and I founded Apple Read after that, which is the Appalachian Family Literacy Corps. And like a lot of you, our job was to go and work with kids and parents and help them to make literacy an important part of their life. And our whole goal was to not just tutor the kids ourselves, it was actually to show parents how they could be role models for their kids when it came to literacy, through home visits and sharing some of the techniques that we used with them. But what I've realized is that with our AmeriCorps program, a lot of times you, the members, you benefit the most, even more than the people that you serve. And that's a good thing. I mean, don't get me wrong, that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. You will come out of here with all sorts of skills about writing and speaking. You will do things that you never thought you could do before by the end of this. And you will be a better person for the rest of your life because you've been in this program. It set me on a path. What my challenge is to you is that in the midst of becoming this amazing person that you're going to become to this program, that you step back every once in a while and you challenge yourself to try to share that with somebody else. When you have an opportunity to speak, every once in a while step back and say, wait a second, can I have one of my kids speak for me? Can I give them this opportunity? And in that way, you're helping them to learn what you're already learning, which is that the people that give are often the people that get the most. And that's a valuable lesson, one that you are learning right now, and one that you can turn around and then you can teach the people that you'll be working with for this year. So to close, I just want to say, you guys are really a hopeful group. There's a lot of negative stuff going on in West Virginia, in the nation right now, but I look out here and I see folks that are ready to serve. And it reminds me that 20 years ago I was you, and I was ready to serve. And someday you'll be me and there'll be somebody else out there doing the exact same thing. And it's heartening that we can pass this leadership on and this torch on to each other in a new generation. So that's my challenge to you. Do that, learn, be a leader, pass it on to somebody else. Thank you.